I stood in the doorway of what used to be my home, staring at the gleaming marble countertops and custom cabinetry that had magically appeared in my absence. My hands trembled as I gripped the folder containing 5 years of bank statements, proof of every payment I'd made while my brother lived here rent-free. The renovation invoice Jordan had just handed me, $100,000, felt like a slap in the face, but not as much as the smug expression on her perfectly made-up face. "We thought you'd be pleased," Jordan said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We've increased your property value significantly. Of course, we expect to be reimbursed for our investment." Investment. That's what she called secretly renovating my property without permission while I scraped by in a studio apartment, saving every penny to fix up this duplex myself. I looked at my brother Kai, searching for any sign of the boy who used to share his Halloween candy with me, who promised we'd always have each other's backs. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, when I'd inherited this duplex from our grandmother, I'd been the family success story. The golden child who'd worked 3 jobs through college, who'd landed a decent marketing position, who'd finally had something to show for all those years of struggle. Our parents had thrown a party to celebrate, the same parents who now wouldn't return my calls. "Alina?" Kai finally spoke, his voice carrying that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. "Don't be dramatic. We've done you a favor. The place was falling apart." Falling apart? The same words our mother had used about my life when I'd refused to help pay for my younger sister Emma's wedding. Not just any wedding, a $75,000 extravaganza that my parents had insisted on planning, complete with ice sculptures and a string quartet. They'd assumed I'd contribute at least $20,000 because, after all, I had that nice job and that rental property. What they didn't know was that I'd been hemorrhaging money trying to keep the duplex from being condemned. Foundation issues, plumbing disasters, electrical work that couldn't wait. Every month brought a new crisis, and every month I chose to let Kai and Jordan stay rent-free because he was my brother, because family helps family, because I remembered what it was like to have nowhere to go. I'd tried to explain this to my mother over coffee one afternoon, sitting in her pristine kitchen with its unused copper pots and designer backsplash. "Mom, I'm barely keeping my head above water. I can't afford to help with Emma's wedding right now." Her face had transformed into something I barely recognized. "Your sister deserves a beautiful wedding. After everything she's been through, don't. You think she deserves happiness? Everything she'd been through. Emma's great tragedy was breaking up with her college boyfriend and having to move back home for 6 months. Meanwhile, I'd been sleeping in my car during finals week because I couldn't afford both rent and textbooks, but that story had somehow been edited out of the family narrative. "I'm not saying she doesn't deserve happiness," I'd tried to reason. "I'm saying I literally don't have $20,000. You have that property," she'd countered, as if real estate could be liquidated like a savings account. "You could take out a loan." When I'd refused, when I'd stood my ground and said I wouldn't go into debt for a one-day party, that's when everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't invited to family dinners. My calls went unanswered. And when my own wedding day came, a small ceremony with just our closest friends, my parents had sent a card. Not even a nice card. Just something generic from the drugstore with a pre-printed message. Emma's explanation, delivered via text, had been brutally simple. "Mom and Dad aren't interested in attending a gathering of losers. Maybe if you'd learned to prioritize family, things would be different." Losers. That's what they called my husband. Marcus, who'd grown up in foster care and worked as a paramedic. That's what they called our friends, teachers and nurses and social workers who didn't drive luxury cars or vacation in Europe. That's what they called the life we'd built through honest work and mutual respect. But now, standing in my illegally renovated duplex, I realized the real irony. All that money my parents had thrown at Emma's fairy tale wedding? Gone within 2 years when her husband's startup folded. The house they'd bought with inherited money? Foreclosed on after Dad's gambling debts finally caught up with them. And where did they want to live now that their house of cards had collapsed? With me, of course. Family helps family after all. You have 48 hours, I heard myself say, my voice steadier than I felt. Either you start paying market rent for this newly renovated unit, which my lawyer estimates at $3,500 a month, or you buy the property at its current assessed value. Jordan's perfectly painted lips parted in shock. You can't be serious. We're family. Family. The word that had been weaponized against me for years. Family means free labor. Family means unlimited financial support. Family means accepting disrespect with a smile. But family had never meant protection or loyalty or unconditional love, at least not in my experience. Were we family when you did this behind my back? I asked, gesturing at the renovations. Were we family when you knew I was saving every penny to fix this place up myself? Were we family when you planned this whole scheme to force me to pay? For your dream kitchen? Kai stood up, his face flushed with anger. You always were selfish, Alina. Just like when you wouldn't help with Emma's wedding. Just like when you moved away for college instead of staying here to help Mom with the house. You've never put family first. The accusation hung in the air. Between us. And for a moment, I was 17 again, crying in my guidance counselor's office because my parents had threatened to throw me out if I accepted the scholarship to State University. Too far away, they'd said. Who would help with the family business? Who would babysit Emma? Who would be there when they needed something? But I wasn't 17 anymore. I was 32, with my own life and my own boundaries and my own definition of what family meant. You're right, I said, surprising us both. I didn't put the family first. I put myself first. I got an education. I built a career. I married someone who actually loves me instead of what I can provide. And because I put myself first, I'm the only one in this family who isn't broke, desperate, or living in someone else's property rent-free. The silence that followed was deafening. Jordan's face had gone pale beneath her makeup, and Kai looked like I'd punched him in the stomach, but I wasn't done. 5 years of resentment, of being used, of being called selfish for having boundaries, it all came pouring out. Do you want to know why I really let you live here rent-free? I asked Kai. It wasn't because Mom guilted me into it. It wasn't because I felt obligated. It was because I remembered what it was like to be 25 and scared and have nowhere to go. I remembered sleeping in my car and showering at the gym and pretending everything was fine. I didn't want my brother to go through that. Kai's jaw tightened. We never asked for your pity. No, I agreed. You asked for my property. And when I gave it to you, when I sacrificed my own renovation plans so you could have a place to live, you repaid me by going behind my back. You want to talk about selfish? Look in the mirror. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Heard you're being difficult with your brother. This is why we don't include you in family events. Call me when you're ready to apologize. I almost laughed. Even now, even when they needed my help, they couldn't resist trying to manipulate me. But manipulation only works when you care about maintaining the relationship, and I'd stopped caring the day they called my wedding a gathering of losers. I'll have my lawyer send over the paperwork, I said, turning to leave. You can either sign a lease at market rate or make an offer on the property. Those are your only options. What about Mom and Dad? Jordan called after me. They're supposed to move in next month. We told them they could have the spare bedroom. I stopped at the door but didn't turn around. Then I guess you'd better figure out how to afford the rent. Or they can sleep on your new marble countertops. Either way, it's not my problem. The drive home was surreal. I'd expected to feel guilty, to second-guess myself, to worry about what the family would say. Instead, I felt light, free. Like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. Marcus was waiting in our kitchen, our small, outdated, perfectly adequate kitchen, with a cup of tea and a concerned expression. How did it go? I collapsed into his arms, letting the tears finally come. Not tears of sadness or regret, but tears of relief. They're going to hate me, I whispered into his shoulder. They already hate you, he said gently, rubbing my back. They hate that you succeeded without their help. They hate that you won't. Let them use you. They hate that you're happy. The only difference is now. You're not pretending otherwise. He was right. I'd spent years trying to earn their love, their approval, their basic respect. I'd twisted myself into knots trying to be the daughter and sister they wanted, and it had never been enough. There was always another demand, another expectation, another way I'd failed to put family first. But Marcus was my family. Our friends were our family. The life we'd built together, small and simple and honest, that was worth protecting, the sea. Next few weeks were a blur of legal documents and angry phone calls. Kai and Jordan tried everything. Guilt, anger, threats to sue. My parents got involved, of course, alternating between playing the victim and trying to browbeat me into submission. Emma sent a series of texts about how I was destroying the family, conveniently forgetting how she'd helped destroy my wedding day with her cruel words. But every time I wavered, I remembered Jordan's smug face as she handed me that invoice. I remembered my mother's dismissive voice saying she wasn't interested in my gathering of losers. I remembered sleeping in my car while my siblings lived comfortably at home, secure in the knowledge that they were the favorites. The turning point came when my father showed up at my office. He'd never visited me at work before, had never shown interest in what I did or how I'd gotten there. But now he needed something, and suddenly I was worth his time. "Alina," he said, settling into the visitor's chair like he belonged there. "This has gone on long enough. Your brother made a mistake, but family forgives. You need to let this go." "Like you let go of my wedding?" I asked, not looking up from my computer. "Like you forgave me for not funding Emma's party?" His face darkened. "That was different. You had the means to help and chose not to." "I chose not to go into debt," I corrected. "Just like I'm choosing not to pay for renovations I didn't authorize. Funny how consequences only apply to me in this family." "You've always been difficult," he said, standing up. "Always thinking you're better than us. Well, let me tell you something. When you're old and alone because you've driven away everyone who loves you, remember this moment. Remember that you chose property over people." After he left, I sat in my office and thought about his words. People over property. It sounded noble until you realized that I was never included in people. I was the property, the resource to be mined, the wallet to be emptied, the scapegoat to be blamed. The resolution came faster than expected. Faced with the prospect of paying market rent or buying the property at its newly assessed value, Kai and Jordan folded. They couldn't afford either option, having spent all their savings on the renovations they'd expected me to reimburse. They moved out in a flurry of passive-aggressive Facebook posts and carefully orchestrated family drama. My parents, suddenly homeless and too proud to admit their financial mistakes, ended up moving in with Emma and her new boyfriend in his one-bedroom apartment. The irony of them cramming into a space smaller than the losers' gathering venue wasn't lost on me. I hired contractors to finish the renovations properly, fixing the corners Kai and Jordan had cut in their rush to create their dream home. The duplex became a successful rental property, generating the income I'd always planned for it to provide. Marcus and I used the extra money to buy our own house. Nothing fancy, but ours, with no strings attached and no family drama built into the foundation. The estrangement was complete and, surprisingly, peaceful. No more guilt-laden phone calls. No more demands disguised as requests. No more being told I was selfish for having boundaries. The family narrative continued without me. I'm sure with new villains and victims as needed, but I was no longer a character in their drama. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I thought about the family I'd wanted versus the family I'd had. I grieved for the relationships that had never really existed, for the support system that had always been conditional, for the love that came with a price tag I couldn't afford to pay. But grief, I learned, could coexist with relief. Loss could lead to freedom. The baby kicked, reminding me that my story wasn't ending. It was beginning. Marcus and I had created our own family, one built on mutual respect and genuine love. Our child would grow up knowing their worth wasn't measured in what they could provide or how well they played their assigned role. They would be loved for who they were, not what they could do for others. Looking back, I realized the renovation scheme had been a gift in disguise. Not the kitchen upgrade or the increased property value, but the clarity it brought. My family had shown me exactly who they were and what they thought I was worth. And I'd finally shown them and myself that I was worth so much more than they'd ever imagined. The duplex stood as a testament to that truth. What Kai and Jordan had tried to steal, I'd reclaimed. What they'd tried to manipulate me into paying for, I'd turned into an asset. What they'd meant as a trap became my liberation. My phone buzzed occasionally with flying monkeys, distant relatives or family friends trying to broker a reconciliation. The message was always the same. Family is everything. You'll regret this. They've changed. Give them another chance. But I'd given them 30 years of chances. I'd bankrupted myself emotionally trying to earn their love. The only thing I regretted was not setting boundaries sooner. Marcus found me on the porch one evening, watching the sunset over our small but perfect backyard. "Any regrets?" he asked, settling beside me with his hand on my growing belly. "No," I said, and meant it. I spent so long trying to be part of their story that I forgot to write my own, but I'm writing it now. He kissed my temple, and we sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd chosen each other over blood, who'd built something real in a world full of facades. Inside, dinner was cooking. Nothing fancy, just soup and sandwiches, but made with love rather than obligation. Friends were coming over later, the kind who showed up for both celebrations and crises, who knew that family was about showing up, not showing off. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about my brother, probably convincing someone else to fund his dreams. I thought about my parents, learning too late that bridges burned from both ends. I thought about Emma, still chasing the fairy tale that had bankrupted them all. But mostly, I thought about tomorrow. About doctor's appointments and nursery planning and all the ordinary miracles that make up a life lived authentically. About teaching our child that no is a complete sentence and that love shouldn't come with terms and conditions. About breaking cycles and building something better from the ashes of what never really was. The duplex renovation had cost $100,000. But my freedom? That had been priceless. And unlike marble countertops or custom cabinetry, it was something no one could ever take away from me again. In the end, I'd learned the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is to stop letting them treat you like property. Sometimes love means saying no. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to build the life you deserve, even if you have to build it alone. But I wasn't alone. I had Marcus. I had our friends. I had the child growing inside me. And most importantly, I had myself, whole, worthy, and finally free. The stars came out one by one, and I made a wish on the first one I saw. Not for reconciliation or forgiveness or some fairy tale ending where everyone suddenly understood. I wished for continued strength, for the courage to maintain my boundaries, for the wisdom to teach my child what real love looked like, because real love didn't demand $100,000 renovations. Real love didn't call your wedding a gathering of losers. Real love didn't show up only when it needed something. Real love looked like Marcus, bringing me tea without being asked. It looked like friends who celebrated our small victories and supported us through our struggles. It looked like the life we'd built through honest work and mutual respect. And that was worth more than all the marble countertops in the world.